So, hello, I am Xochitl M, and formerly known as another name. I changed my last name a few years ago, about 5 years ago, because I was going into the entertainment business. And one, I felt it was too long, but also I wanted to it match what I am and not really be about my past or anybody that I used to know. I'm going to go over my story really quick. So, if you're mine, I'm an instructor, performing arts instructor, mainly ballroom dance. And if you see my other YouTube channel, you see some of that. But you will have gotten one of these magazines, and it has my bio in it. And it talks a little bit about what I've done in music and other arts, etc. But I just want to apologize because I've had a migraine for like 5 days. I know that's concerning, and you're supposed to like go to the doctor, and maybe you have like brain abscess or there's something else wrong. Maybe you have a head infection or something. That's really gross. But I'm gonna go to the doctor on Monday. Anyway, that's what concerned me, is that, oh my God, it feels like death. It feels like you don't know how long you can live like this, right? So I asked some people on my Facebook if they wanted to hear my story, and I got a few yeses. Now, if I'll get 30 people who with the story, and sometimes only 7, but in any case, some of them said yes. So some of them do know him. Most of my students don't follow me on Facebook, follow me on YouTube and Instagram. But in any case, because I'm going through this, I felt it necessary to finally tell my story as a normal person. Because previously on this channel, years ago, it must have been like maybe 10, 15 years ago, that I was posting on this channel a little bit about my mental health condition. And I had a hard time doing it at the time because I was still going through major stuff. And so it was hard for me to just get out a thought. And I would have this whole idea of a video, and as I was talking, it wouldn't come out the way I wanted. But I would post it anyway, because I'll figure, next time I'll think of what I didn't say and say it again next time. But I stopped doing that because I got a job and started being realistic about how people would view me, and what that would mean for me professionally. Talking about mental health conditions at the time wasn't a popular thing. So it just came about the last couple of years. People want to be really open about it, raise awareness, etc. And there's a lot going on in the world right now. I am Mexican American. I was born here in America. My mother was born here in America, and my father was brought here by his parents when he was a child. So, there are a lot of concerning things happening with us right now. I wish that I could fix those lights, really bothering me. But anyway, I put out this magazine. There's my bio in it. If you ever got it, you may have read it and said, well, this isn't very vague. This doesn't name any names, and I didn't want to do any name dropping in it. Today, after these first long 4 minutes of explanation, I'm going to tell you a little bit about, we'll just get started with one thing. Let's talk about my existence in the music industry, which right now is non-existent, but how they know of me. So you may have heard of etc. And there's a lot of songs talking about it over the last 25 years. And in some cases, they're talking about, and that's even hard to say, because I think there's just going to be a lot of disbelievers and people that are like, boo, nanny, you're lying, you're a liar. And then there's people in the industry that do not want to admit to the ghostwriting, etc. But I'll tell you, one of the people I'm talking about is Eminem. And everybody in the world wants me never to say this again. They want me to shut up and pretend it didn't happen, but I'm going to tell you the honest truth about what happened with us. And he can deny it. I think legally he has to deny it and pretend that I don't exist, because it's a lot of money concern there. But this is what happened to me. And over the years, I realized that conspiracy, what it felt like in the beginning, but that it's just the way the circumstances and how each situation happened then became like a bigger issue and was like, oh crap, now it's really like I can't do anything, can be considered a conspiracy. But I think all in all, that's not what was meant to happen. It wasn't supposed to go this far. But what happened to me anyway, I had an ex-boyfriend that was a rapper, and he didn't really know that I could sing or rap or anything. And we had an interesting relationship. It was just like he was a drug addict and smoking all the time, cigarettes and weed and alcohol. And I was in there, but I didn't do drugs. I was not a drug user, addict, or anything. I did drink a little bit. And when I say a little bit, where your friends make fun of you and will call you an alcoholic, but it really wasn't that bad. I'm not an alcoholic. I don't drink anymore. I'm totally sober, 100% sober. I haven't had an ounce of any kind of substance, God, for like 20 years. But that's not because of addiction. It's just that I live my life with my mom still, and I don't really go out. And because I'm a dancer, and I'm getting older, it's harder for me to have that recovery the next day from a hangover and whatever. So I just don't even do it. But anyway, so when I was younger, I was going out with this rapper, on and on. And you could have said that we were in love, but there was a lot of other stuff. And this migraine is killing me, so I'm going to turn on this light here. Let me turn off those lights. Okay, that's much better, right? Great. So he was in the rap game since he was a teen. We were young teenagers, and he didn't really like Eminem as much as everybody else did. He kind of thought that he was like hassling him. When you're on drugs, you get all this mental stuff, and there is some telepathic stuff that happens. You get connected to people when they see you coming up, but he sort of had some of that, and he got the idea that he could really be a rapper. So he would create stuff on his computer and, was really trying to do it on his own. And then as we got older, 19, 20 years old, he made some connections with Bay Area rappers and some producers in the Bay Area of California. And it's sort of a different world. Is a little bit different than it is in LA, and a little bit different than it would be in any other state, New York, whatever. It's just a different vibe. And then if you know anything about, Bay Area rappers, they were known to be a lot speedier, faster, Twista, da 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 da. Where you have Busta Rhymes, we had our own fast, speedy rappers, and Motor Mouth, I guess you could say. So my boyfriend was one of them, but he's white. He's a white kid, classic with the backwards hat from the 90s and the early 2000s that you would have seen. That people just didn't expect that coming from him. But anyway, got really close to getting a deal. And at that time, our relationship had been so off and on, and there was a lot of drama between us that I was causing trouble with him and producers. I got in a fight with one of the producers' girlfriends on his front lawn, and it made him really angry at me. So that's a long story. That's a story about our whole relationship. But basically, I was kind of upset that he was always doing these albums and he was never asking me part of it. They would hang out in their room, rapping in a little microphone and the speakers and stuff. And I would just be sitting there. It was like not until I was like 21, like much older, they had handed me the microphone for the first time. They tried to get me to say something. He's like, come here, I want to show you what we do. Like, for the first time, they had been doing this all the time, and then all of a sudden, he wants me to come see it, right? So, and at the time, I had been just songs, since I was a child, since I was 6 years old. It's something I had always done. In my mind, telepathically, I would connect to people and help them out writing songs. I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think it was an illness. Definitely not, because it wasn't symptomatic of anything, excuse me. And, but I would help out. So from time to time, I would hear songs like, oh yeah, I remember that one. It didn't occur to me that it was like this big business, money, money, money. But sometimes my songs I would hide away in my closet and they would go missing. And I figured that my father would find them, and we were so broke, he didn't have any money. Sometimes we were just eating tuna and ketchup, whatever we could find in the fridge, whatever's left from something or other, that I thought he was just selling my songs. And, that's what was paying for food on our table. So I never mentioned anything about it. I was like, well, if that's what we got to do, then that's what we got to do. But he wouldn't tell me. And I was kind of upset that just there were lies and he was sort of stealing from my bedroom. And anyway, I don't know if that's true because he wouldn't tell me. It could have been my cousin. It could have been my uncle. It could have been my best friend. It could have been anybody, right? But we were always poor. And so I meet my boyfriend. He's a rapper, and then later on, he invites me to rap with him and say a couple lines, whatever, and I'm really shy about it. I ask him if he wants to put me on his album. He shows me one of his songs. I was like, was that just something they gave you, like sample of something they gave you, or did you ask that girl to be on your album? Like, I can sing better than that. And it was like, oh, well, show me. I was like, but I don't know this song. I don't know what this is. Like, we could have created something together. And I was really pissed off that he's in the studio with some other girl. He didn't even ask me. So it caused a lot of drama between us, that there was stuff going on. He didn't even give me a chance. But I wasn't really in there telling him that I wanted to do it either. So anyway, that year, there was just a lot of terrible things that happened to me. Hold up, wait a minute. I forgot part of this story. Before I continue, I was gaining a reputation. I started running a lot. I wasn't really fat, but I was kind of chunky, and I wanted to get into shape. I was a young person, and like I said, I was on drugs. I was the healthy one in my friends and family. And my mom was a volleyball champion. She almost made it to the Olympics one year, but she got beat. And I grew up in the gym, and I grew up with athletes, and I wanted to be a dancer, and I was a dancer at the time. I was in a ballet folklorico group with some family members and friends. So I needed to stay in shape, and I started running. And I would run at all hours of the day and night, sometimes 2 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. So small town, so everybody knows, and word spreads fast. So even I had a job, nobody knew who this runner was. But because I was running at all hours of the night, depending on my work schedule, and when I had time, I would even walk and run to my dance practice, which was in the town next to us. So I had to cross over train tracks, and people would see me cross over the train tracks all the time by myself at night. So I was gaining a reputation. One day there was a party at my boyfriend's house. He was the party house. That's where all the parties happened. And there, when I came in, everybody was to leave. I was sort of his, for the first portion of our relationship, I was his main chick, right? And everybody else had to get out. But I didn't know when he was seeing other girls, and he didn't know when I was seeing other guys. We were just together when we were together, and very, very close. But so I came in one day, and all these girls were asked to leave, and on their way out, I heard him having a conversation with one of them that she knew who I was, and she asked how he knew me, and he said, "Don't worry about it, just get out. We'll talk later." And she left, and I sat down at the table. It was just, the group of friends that we've always had since we were kids. Somebody mentions this name, Little Rocky. And I'm like, what? And they said, they're calling you Little Rocky. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, you run around town. You run early mornings, late nights. People are calling you Little Rocky. Have you ever heard that? And I said, no, I never heard that before. So, but that's funny. And they made a joke, like, they think you're going out on your runs. I was like, oh, on my runs? What do you mean? Like late night runs to meet people? And he said, yeah. And I was like shocked. I was like, wait a minute, you mean like a dealer or like a hooker? What are you talking about? And I got upset, and I was like, wait, that's really bad. Like, that's not the reputation I have. That's not what I need my family to hear. What are you talking about? Who's saying this? And because where he lived, where I was at, was in Fairfield, California, and where he lived was about Vallejo, California, which is a little bit closer to San Francisco. So it's all the Bay Area. And that had gotten that far out already that there's this runner called Little Rocky, and the word was that doing tricks on my runs or something. It's like very upsetting. I was worried. I was like, I can't be out running, and then what if the news gets to the cops and then I'm pulled over? He said, that's the thing, is that they heard about you taking rides with cops, because I had asked cops to take me home sometimes from work if it was really late at night. And I was like, no way, I'm not part of this corrupt police system or whatever. But I was upset. I almost cried about it. But they joked about it, and they're like, it's all right, don't worry about it. And there's nothing anybody could really do. Word was spreading really, really fast. So that's what was happening that year in my life. I had become known as Little Rocky. And this sort of small town fame was getting around the Bay Area and possibly spreading down to LA. But here's where the story comes, where I meet Eminem and how that all has to do with it. I just gotten a job. I had like 2 jobs and working a lot, and I didn't know. My boyfriend and I were on or off at the time. So somebody asked me on a date, and I went, and terrible things happened that night. I was roofied and hotboxed, and then they, got me to drink shot after shot after shot, and I didn't know what I was doing at one point. Like the whole night is really foggy, but bad things happened for sure. And I tried to call my boyfriend, have him come pick me up, and I didn't know where I was. And then the guys that I was with broke my phone and told me not to make any phone calls. But that's a different story. Anyway, this terrible night happened to me, and the very next night, I had to go to work. So I went to work, and then they showed up at my work and was like, boy, I'm really in trouble. Like, these people are following around to make sure I'm not saying anything. And my boss understood the situation that I was in. I didn't even have to tell him, but we were not close. He was sort of sexually harassing me. He had asked me to be his girlfriend while his wife was out of town for a couple of weeks in Texas, and he wanted me, like hang out with him and go to parties and blah, 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 stay at his house. And I said, no. I refused, and I was like, this is just a play. We need to get out of here. So that night, I went home and I was just writing. Every night I had been writing in my notebook, in my journal, songs, journal entries, and every night. I did that every night since I can remember. But that night I was writing and I came up with actual album where there was a theme and there's like, it was all, together about the same stuff, and it was an album. And I was like, oh man, that was a good one. Like, it took a while, and somehow Eminem got connected to me, and it's just, all of this rap stuff that was going on. I guess there was some confusion. It confuses you, and he tries to tell you that what you're doing is his, and it's not his if you're the one writing it, But he didn't actually do that to me. He was just like, heard you. Who are you? He asked me who I was, and I told him. He said, where are you? So I told him where I was, and he said, well, you can meet. I want, meet you and take you in the studio, whatever. Will you meet me tomorrow? And I said, where are you? And he said that he was in San Francisco. And I said, what are you doing in San Francisco? Okay. So it was sort of this mental call. And you're not supposed to talk about these things. I hate that you're not supposed to talk about these things because they happen all the time. But it was a mental call. And, it does make you sort of suspicious, like maybe it's not the real person, or who's doing that? How do I know it's you? I was just like, yeah, okay, whatever. Because at the time, the way my life was going was like, I was just being really not very careful, and just was looking for any way out of my situation. And every time I looked for a way out of my situation, I got in trouble, but I just kept looking. So after the conversation, I called my boyfriend and I said, listen, I'm not supposed to tell you. He wants me to meet him alone. He's like, what are you talking about? Who are you talking about? And I said, I just spoke with him and he heard some of my stuff and he wants to come meet. But he wants me to go alone, and I don't know that I really want to go by myself. Do you want to come with me? He said, no. Because the night, like I said, 2 nights before, I had called him while I was with other, and they broke my phone. I was on the phone with him, and I didn't know where I was, and he couldn't come and help me. And so he was just like really pissed off and didn't want to deal with me at the time. And I was like, no, you don't understand. Can we just forget about everything? This could be a big opportunity for both of us. Can you just come with me? Like, it would be awful if I did this without you and I didn't even tell you. I was like begging him to come. And it was midnight and I lived with my grandmother and they were asleep and I was trying not to talk really loud. So I was like whispering. And he goes, no. And I said, I can't talk to you anymore. Everybody's waking up. The lights are turning on. I gotta go. And I said, but please meet me. And I told him to meet me at the mall at 9 a.m., 10 a.m., something like that, in the parking lot. I don't know where it was, like by the Macy's or something. And he said, go alone. Go by yourself. And I was mad because I was like, after everything that just happened, you still want me to just be going by myself. So I thought that like our relationship was over. I was like, it's over. Like I had totally screwed it up. I don't know what went wrong, and I can't fix it right now, but I got this huge opportunity. So I went the next morning, and as I was getting ready, my notebook I left on under my pillow in my room. And, my family is, I think my grandma had 10 kids, almost 11, but one of them died. And So my uncles and my aunts had lived in that house growing up their whole lives. So they would come and go as they pleased. My cousins come and go as they pleased. They would come any time of day or night for whatever reasons. And so that day, my uncle came, but I can't be sure about this because it could have been the aunt that I lived with. I don't know, but my stuff would go missing. I would get a new shirt, and then my aunt would be wearing it, and she didn't even live there. And she'd be like, "Oh yeah, isn't this pretty on me?" I was like, "It's mine." So that happened to me all the time. If you have a big family, you understand. Stuff goes missing. So anyway, I was going to take a shower to put my notebook under the pillow, and I get out of the shower, and my uncle's just leaving the door, and he goes walking to his truck, and I'm in a towel that doesn't even fit. Like, this part is open. It doesn't even fit. I'm like, shit, like, excuse my language, but where's my notebook? And it's the first thing I searched for. I should have taken it in the bathroom with me, but I didn't. It was gone, missing. I looked in my aunt's room. She wasn't looking at it. So I went outside, and he was carrying a notebook. So I went running halfway through the drive, and I was like, oh my God, like my towel's gonna fall off. I went running back inside and said, "Hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? Where are you going? Come back." And he left. He got instructed. He left, and I was like, I have to go clothes on when I came out. Like, he wasn't coming back. I don't know that he had a cell phone. It wasn't like I could have just called him and see where he was going or anything. So I was like, well, whatever, I still have to go to this meeting. And then my other cousins called me and they said, "We're going to the mall this morning. Do you want to come with us?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, actually, I need to go to the mall. Can you give me a ride?" And they said, "Yeah." And I said, "But I need to leave in like 5 minutes." They said, "Okay, we'll be there in a second." And in this small city, small town, I guess, at the time it was a lot smaller than it is now. Mall was the only place to go. And it's within walking distance for everybody. Some people are a little bit further out, so they would drive. And so I was really close to the mall. I could have walked. It was 2 blocks away. But they were going to give me a ride, so they gave me a ride. I sat there, and I didn't tell them what I was doing, but my friend that used to dance with us in our political group, he was with them. And he was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm going to sit outside for a second. I'm going to meet somebody, and then I'll be right back in." And he said, "What's it for?" He thought like I was picking up drugs or something. And I was like, no, it's not. I talked to somebody yesterday. They were going to talk to me today. I'm going to, I'll be back in a minute. I'll call you. And he was like, "Are you sure you don't want me to stay with you? Are you okay?" And he thought like I wasn't safe. And he was like the real boyfriend type, where always protecting us. And he was like an older brother, like making sure we were okay. But he was not my boyfriend. He was younger than me. And I was like, "No, you're okay. Just go." But I think he went inside the doors of the mall and just stayed there and watched me. I don't think he left me alone. I think he was watching me, but I couldn't see him. So then the cars rolled by, 2 or 3 big black cars, black like SUV, like, and they stopped. And the window rolled down in the back seat of the first car. And I was like, "Oh, there they are." So I go over there, and the window rolls down, and it's this blonde guy. He looks like Eminem. But I don't know a lot about Eminem. I just know what I know from a couple of videos that I've seen. I wasn't a huge, obsessed fan of this person. The movie hadn't come out yet. So 8 Mile hadn't even, I think it was coming out that year, but it wasn't out yet. And so there was like going to be this another big Eminem boom that nobody knew about yet. And if they did know, I didn't watch TV. I worked and I partied. My grandma would use the TV and she would watch novelas. And so I didn't know anything that was going on with rap or music on MTV or anything like that. American Idol had just started and I had seen it off and on, but I wasn't like watching it every week, you know? So yeah, I was just a songwriter and a singer, and sometimes I would rap stuff. And so he opens the window and he says hello. And at the time, I don't know if I can show you a picture. I'll show you a picture now. Maybe I'll edit the video and show you a picture. But I was really cute. I had this big bright smile ever since. My teeth have moved. They're not, well, sometimes it's hard to explain. One of my symptoms is this moving around in my face. My face changed a little bit, so I don't always look the same. And actually, it affects my teeth and my smile. So sometimes I will have my smile as it was when I had braces, totally straight. And then sometimes they'll just get totally messed up and it feels like it's not my face, you know. So that's a symptom I go through now that I've been going through. I've talked about that on this channel before. The medications that I was on caused that to happen to me, and it's not really curable. There is a medication. This is off topic, but if you take the medications, no telling where your face will stop moving, you know, so you may never look the same. Anyway, so I don't take it. Oh my God, it's like hot in here. But so anyway, he says hi, I say hi, I smiled. He said, you have a very beautiful smile. I said, thank you, you're not so bad yourself. And kind of in a flirty way. He was actually very cute, but I barely remember it, that time of my life, because it was really like I had that roofie night, and then I didn't sleep and I went to work the next day, and then I wrote all night, and then he contacted me in the middle of the night, and then I had to get up early, and so like I don't even know how I remember it. Like, it's so foggy. But it was him, and he had a driver, a black guy, big black driver, and the car behind him had a couple of other black guys in there, big guys, which later I assumed was like 50 Cent or something. I don't know. I didn't meet the people in the second car. But he was talking to me, and he said, do you have the songs? And I said, actually, they were stolen this morning. My notebook was stolen this morning. I don't have it. I don't have my hands on it, but I could do something else. And he said, well, could you remember if I took it into the studio, could you remember them and do them on the spot? And I said, yeah, they probably wouldn't be exactly the same, but I could do it. I remember, I thought about it for like 2 seconds, and I was like, yeah, no, they're still in my, yeah, I could do it. And he looked at me for like a couple of seconds, like a moment of thought. And he was like, all right, get in. And I was like, okay. So I tried to open the door. She locked the door, and he goes, the other side. And I said, well, just scoot over. And he said, other side. I was like, what? I was like, I think what happened is because of what I had went through a couple nights before, I was deadly scared. I had this moment of fear where, like, if I walked behind the car that was behind him was set up to run me over, to squish me between the car. Like, I thought they would kill me. I just was going through some paranoia. I wasn't schizophrenic or anything, but it was just like, I don't, you know, because he wouldn't just let me in the car. He got kind of very serious. And it's just a ton of men that I was dealing with. There were no females there, and it was by myself. I was afraid of going in front of the car. I didn't want to run me over. I was afraid of going in the back of the car because I didn't want them to, you know, smush me. And it just was like having a little bit of panic attack. I didn't really have the time to explain to him what was going on with me. I was like, just let me in. And I was like, just let me in, like, scoot over. And he's get on the other side. And I said, can you please? I said, why don't you just scoot over? Scoot over and let me in. And I was thinking, like, that I have some chivalry. I was like, you ever heard of chivalry? And he said, get in on the other side. And he got pissed off at me. And I was like, you know what? What happened just before that is that when he was asking me if I could redo the songs, I stepped away and I said, give me just a second, because somebody else was connecting to me to write a song. They were doing it by themselves and it wasn't really helping them, but I could hear it. I was like, okay, I can't do these two things at once. I have to somehow not lose my stuff, not lose my shit, and disconnect with these people so I could have this conversation. So he thought I was like a little bit weird, I think. And then I had my panic attack and I was like, you know what? It's too crazy. These things is too crazy for me right now. You know, I didn't say that, but I was like, right there for a second. Some of this is because I wanted to talk about mental health conditions. Mine in particular, it's all I can talk about really. But this is a really important part because I didn't necessarily have symptoms of schizophrenia, really. But at the time, and you can ask my boyfriend at the time, I think I forgot to tell you his name. His name was Mike. He went by rap name Syllable. And he had seen me from time to time go through some small panic attacks. His friends had to inform him that that's what was going on because he was like, what's her problem? You know, what's her deal? And, you know, because we had been together off and on for like 6 years, there was some like, are we going to stay together, have babies, get married, blah, blah, blah. And I think he was questioning whether or not it was something he could deal with. But he sort of had to do the thing where they get real close to you and hold on to you and allow you to breathe, etc. He had to do that a couple of times. But so these panic attacks had been happening slowly, probably more so after my father passed away when I was 19. So at this time, it was 2002. It just turned. If the movie was out, it had just come out, but I hadn't seen it. I never even heard of it. I didn't even know, right? But I was experiencing that from time to time, and the only people that knew were my closest friends, which were my boyfriend and his buddies. And I would, with the heavy breathing, sort of the pacing back and forth, not really knowing what I was doing, start asking crazy questions and saying stupid things just to get out of a situation and have to go be in a corner by myself. So when I would be experiencing these things that would make me very nervous, I was like, man, just scoot over. I was being very serious, like, don't do this to me. Don't do this to me right now, please. Just scoot, be nice, be a good guy, scoot over and let me take the seat. But he, we found out later, had autism, and there may have been some other security issues where he couldn't move out of his seat, being behind the driver for a reason, etc. I don't really understand it, you know, or maybe he just didn't want to show me that kind of respect. So in that moment, I was kind of feeling just like he wouldn't take care of me in that way, like also a little bit disrespected. And I was upset. You know what? It's nice meeting you. And I shook his hand and I started backing up, backing away. And he's like, are you sure? I was like, yeah, never mind. I gotta go. You know, I'll find another way. And I said, but if you change your mind, give me a call. And I turned around and I walked away. And these two cars drove out and I could watch them driving away. And I almost started crying because I was like, oh my God, like I just ruined my life. So that's the long story about how I met Eminem. We did meet. He has been denying that meeting for a long time, denies me that I even exist. But the album that I wrote that he really wanted to get his hands on was Recovery, the Recovery album. I wrote probably 98% of that album, and he have some of the songs I did notice that he added to because they were short. What I wrote was really short, or it was just a hook, and he would add to it. But most of it I wrote, it's my album. He didn't do anything to me. Mentally, it was safe. Like, I didn't go crazy because of Eminem. I had other opportunities. About a week or two later, I kept my job. Had just been a week, and my boss, I think he was feeling some guilt, and he was like, you know what? I have some connections to the radio station. If you want, I can help you with your songwriting. And I was like, wait a minute, how does he even know that I do that? I don't know if I had been talking about it to people and forgetting that I was telling them. I remember that I was keeping my notebooks in my backpack. Okay. So in hindsight, when I think about he was trying to give me call girl opportunities. Like, he heard that I was Little Rocky. The word was getting around that I was hooking on my little runs. And he didn't want me doing it on the streets, so he invited me to be his little trick. And then when he mentioned, I got connections at the radio, he wasn't necessarily talking about songwriting. I think that my annoyance was also that he had made that offer and that he was suggesting I could then meet some big name artists and be involved with it instead of doing this thing on the streets. But I was not a hooker. I was not a call girl. That wasn't the direction I was going in my life. I think that girl that claimed to be my sister, she wanted me to be a stripper. I was around all of this stuff, drugs, alcohol, gangs, street life. I was a street kid, but I wasn't actually involved in any of that. I was a good girl, honest to God. I mean, it was not what people thought of me, but I think that maybe it was just the look of me and where I lived and people I hung out with. You gain a reputation whether you like it or not, and it was spreading fast, and my boss wanted to take it a step further, and I was like, I don't know where my life is going now, but I was upset about what had been going on in the last couple of weeks, and I just was sort of traumatized and panicked and angry, and at this point I could not handle it by myself anymore, and I didn't have anyone to talk to about it or to help me. I felt like they were going through my stuff and figuring out what I do. So he had somebody come and see. He asked me, I was like, no, I had an attitude. I was like, no, I don't need your help. Like, leave me alone. Like, mind your own business. And I actually said those things to him, and I was like, why are you like, I'm just trying to work here. I just, I don't want to owe you anything. I don't know you. And I was like, that's too bad. And then later, Timbaland, somebody called themselves Timbaland, came and saw me at work through the back door at my job. And I was like, Timbaland, I know who Timbaland is. I know who Missy Elliott is. I know who Louis is, And I was like, but I wouldn't recognize him. At the time, Timbaland was in the background. This was before his face, before we really knew what he looked like, before Promiscuous came out. thought it was before all of that. And he was standing in front of me. I didn't recognize him. I was like, how do I know you're Timbaland? Like, what's your name? And he told me his name. I don't remember. And I said, can I see ID? And they showed me his ID, and I was looking at it, and I was like, you know what? Because I don't even know your real name, this is not going to work because I don't know who that is. I was like, it doesn't say Timbaland on it, so like, how will I know even who you are? And he invited me to go with him to the studio, and he had my notebook in his hand. I said, can you, like, who gave you permission to go through my backpack and get my notebook? And sorry, I had to blow my nose. So who gave you permission to go through my backpack and get my notebook? Give me my notebook. And I went grabbing for it. He pulled back. I said, give me my notebook. And he wouldn't give it to me. So I didn't want to get in a fight. Also, what was going through my head, Timbaland had, or this guy called himself Timbaland, asked me if I wanted to be the next Aaliyah. And from what I understand, Aaliyah didn't write her own songs. Timbaland wrote them. Or somebody else wrote them, right? I think, no. I love Aaliyah, okay? No disrespect, but I don't want to be the next Aaliyah or the next Selena myself. I want to be the first me. And I was like, what upset me really, what turned me off or made me think that it wasn't Timbaland was like, she had just died the year, like not, maybe even just like 6 months prior. And I was like, why would he be out looking for another and say those words, the next Aaliyah, 6 months after her death? So I wasn't sure if this was him or not. And then if it was, I was like, you know, get out of my face. I don't want to know somebody like that. So I was really turned off by that. And I let him go. I was the only working at that time. Everybody inside was doing something else. My boss wasn't there. I knew that the cameras in the store didn't work, so the cameras outside didn't work. And so he was like, he told me to go in his car, and I was like, in this car, I called it like a crappy blue 1995 Taurus. I was like, this is a 95 Taurus. I'm not going to go, I'm just believe you're Timbaland. I didn't know anything about cars, okay? I have no idea what kind of car this is, but I was just, you know, ragging on him because I didn't know who he was. And he gave me this look like, what the hell? He said, it's a rental. And I said, it's a rental. I was like, from where? Like, don't you guys usually have drivers? And it was just like, not really sure who I was dealing with because I didn't recognize him. And I was mad that he stole my notebook out of my bag. So I was like, you know what? Keep the songs. I'll come up with something else and get an opportunity with somebody else. So, like, I don't know who you are, but good luck with that. And then all the songs came out with other artists, and Timbaland was the producer. So, but still, I don't know if the person that I met that day was actually Timbaland. I would not have recognized. I don't remember his face with my memory. I remember kind of what he looked like, but I thought he was too thin. Like, I thought Timbaland was a big, husky guy, and this guy wasn't that big. The camera adds 10 pounds. It's like 10 pounds, not 50. And it was like, I just didn't believe him. But honestly, I think that this guy just sold my songs, and they ended up in Timbaland's hands. But a lot of my songs got sold and went to many different artists. So I did meet a few people, and I have had the opportunity to go in the studio and actually make my albums and possibly get a deal. But there was no deals promised. It was just like, come with me, we'll see what you can do. So for those of you that think that doesn't happen, they don't just invite you to some strange person off the street, invite them into the studio without knowing who they are or any experience. That's the way it was done at the time. Sierra was pulled out of her prom. They assumed she could dance. They just happen that way. They hear about you, or they see you and they find you and they give you an opportunity because you're cute and you got a lot of nerve. You know, you put your foot indoors where they probably don't belong. And so when they see somebody that has some experience being in front of people and doesn't get nervous, isn't easily intimidated, they'll just pick you up. That's the way it was done at the time, early 2000s, 1990s. That's the way it was done. And so I was like trying to just take advantage of that because I heard that story from people in different places. But I will talk to you in different videos in the future about more about who I am and how they may have heard about me, because these stories happened are all the way back to when I was 5 years old. And it's not like I just woke up one morning and I could connect to all these superstars. So yeah, it just happens to some people, but there's some stuff that has to take place and other ways that they can hear about you. And I was traumatized. And then when I think about it with this whole thing with Diddy that's happened recently, I was escaping what I thought was that I was escaping something like that, because this opportunity didn't come to me until a few days after I had through all of that with those guys I didn't know that roofied me on a date. And I thought, like, oh, that's how it happens. Like, they make the connections for you. They think you're down with that kind of thing. And then they let you in, assuming that you'll do it again. And I just didn't want to do it again. And I was like, I didn't want to do it the first time. So I was trying to escape that. I don't even know that's what would have happened. As far as I know, Eminem doesn't have that reputation, but then if you see pictures and videos from his past, like he was involved in a lot of different parties and he did have a mistress, etc. At the time, he had a mistress that was like Puerto Rican or something at the time. And so had I come, I think it just got a little flirty. There was, like, I don't know. I honestly, had it happened, I would have tried, regardless of his relationships, because as soon as I would have found out that he was divorced, I would have tried. That's the honest truth. My previous boyfriend was a white rapper. It wouldn't have been anything new for me. But anyway, that's whatever. So, story goes on. That's how I met Eminem. The conspiracy part is next. Let me end this 45-minute video, okay? That's how I met Eminem. I'll title it that. And the next video, I'll talk a little bit more about how it then became how I then considered it a conspiracy and whether or not it is actually that. Thank you for watching, guys. This is my personal channel. This is not my business channel. The BA.BL official you can go watch for my dance shows and the other shows that I'm producing. But this is more of my personal experience with my mental health issues and my life and all the different things that have happened to me over years that are kind of interesting. It hasn't been terribly exciting, but I feel like these stories need to be told because some of what's happening right now in Mexican American history, right, is it is the erasing of other kinds of history, American history. And what I was concerned, I wanted to tell my story because I was concerned of how many songs that I wrote and how many artists, white artists, Black artists, Latino artists, are erasing my existence and pretending that I don't exist. Though they do talk about ghostwriters and X, my name isn't mentioned for their legal purposes. And I feel like I need to say something, otherwise, and when I pass, no one will ever know who's really behind a large amount of the hits in the past 25 years. So, thank you for watching.